Hi, I am Michael Earl. I'm with Local Government Risk Management Services. Today we are going to discuss community-oriented policing from a limited perspective. LGRMS, Local Government Risk Management Services, is a division of the Georgia Municipal Association and the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. Community policing, as I had mentioned, from a limited perspective, merely scratches the surface. People often think about community policing or community-oriented policing as bicycle patrols throughout the city or DARE programs within the school. Again, this merely scratches the surface. Community-oriented policing is looking to dig into the root cause of the problem, the cause of crime within a local community. A crime has been committed, 911 has been dialed, the police respond. They may or may not locate a suspect. Let's say they do. They make an arrest. They take them to trial, and hopefully a conviction has been gained. The streets are safe again. But actually, are they? If the cycle of responding to 911 calls, making an arrest, seeing a conviction is our only response to 911 calls, to problems within the community will ultimately wither and die, such as a doctor only treating a patient's symptoms and never trying to find the root cause of what is causing the patient's problem to begin with. Ultimately, the patient dies. We have to seek solutions. You live in your community. You work hard. When you learn of drug activity in your neighborhood, when you learn of car break-ins, of burglaries, it's disheartening. No community is safe. It may be a suburb. It may be an inner city. There are drug activities everywhere. There's criminal activities, there's car break-ins, there's vehicle thefts, there's burglaries. No community is safe. Trust is non-existent. In today's society, officers fear citizens. They fear citizens' complaints. These citizens fear law enforcement. They fear criminals. While not every community has come to this point, many have. Without a concerted effort between the citizens in the community and law enforcement coming together, this problem will not be corrected. Acknowledgement has to take place. Change has to occur. Acknowledgement. We need to acknowledge that there is, in fact, a problem within the community, and our old ways of doing things are not successful. Seasoned veterans of the police department may think, we've always done it this way. We're not going to change. We're going to get out there. We're going to work hard. We're going to lock folks up, and the problem will be solved. The fact is when we take one criminal off the street, there's more to take their place. The police department leadership, the law enforcement leadership, sheriff's departments, we need to acknowledge that there is a problem, and we need to work together to make change in the community. The community has to understand, yes, in fact, there is a problem, and the community has to work with law enforcement to correct that problem. What is community policing? It's a partnership. It's a partnership between the community and law enforcement seeking to resolve problems within the area. It's acknowledging there's a problem and working together to solve these problems. For any program to be successful, you have to have a foundation. The foundation for community-oriented policing is communication, trust, cooperation. Without communication, the citizens will not be able to convey to law enforcement what they really feel the problem is. Until that communication is received and responded to proactively, it's doomed for failure. Law enforcement has to develop trust in the community. The community has to trust law enforcement and vice versa. And then they have to work together, cooperation, to make things happen, make them happen properly. If there is little history of communication between law enforcement and community members, starting with some type of town hall format is a good place to begin. You may not like everything people have to say, but in some instances, that venting will be necessary for healing to begin if the relationship between law enforcement and the community has not been good. Once community members realize that law enforcement is not only willing to listen, but is encouraging a dialogue, You may find it beneficial to seek out people who will be willing to serve on some type of law enforcement advisory committee that can facilitate ongoing communication, trust, and cooperation. Developing open lines of communication is vital to successful community policing program. Citizens have to take responsibility. They cannot just turn to law enforcement and say, you need to do something about the crime in my neighborhood. You, as a citizen, you know your neighborhood. You know where problems occur. You very likely know who may be causing those problems. With that knowledge, coupled with law enforcement actions, things can happen. But you have to work together to make these things happen. Wellness programs. Doctors suggest wellness programs for their patients. Rather than waiting for the patient to come to the doctor's office with a possible debilitating disease such as cancer, heart disease, or something of that nature, the doctor prescribes a wellness program. It may be rest, diet, proper diet, nutrition, exercise. The same thing works with community-oriented policing. Citizens working together to try to solve a problem rather than waiting for the problem to occur. Same thing, wellness program for a community. Rather than the police being reactive to a crime that's already occurred, they become proactive and try to prevent the problem from occurring in the first place. The acronym COPS stands for Community-Oriented Policing and Problem Solving. This concept of community policing had its beginning in the works of Professor Herman Goldstein of the University of Wisconsin, who in 1979 published an article stating that for law enforcement to be more effective, the focus of attention needed to be placed on problem solving. Working more closely with the community alone, which had been tried sporadically in various cities throughout the United States during the 1960s and early 70s. It was not going to get to the root cause of the problem alone. Former New York City Police Commissioner Lee P. Brown summed up the differences between old policing methods and the COPS method when he wrote, "We need to solve community problems rather than just react to them." You can have great communication, trust, and cooperation, but that's only half of what's needed. Community members and law enforcement officers all need to see themselves as problem solvers. Law enforcement and citizens of the community have to determine why the problems exist and attack the causes, not just the symptoms. Problem solving with SARA, S-A-R-A. The acronym SARA, S-A-R-A, stands for Scanning, Analysis, Response, and Assessment. SARA or SARA is a process that can be applied anytime officers are able to identify a problem in the community they serve. In the context of SARA, S-A-R-A, the word problem, has a specific meaning, which is any grouping of two or more incidents which can be described as similar in one or more ways, and which is causing harm to the community, and as a result has become a concern not only to law enforcement, but to the community members as well. When we speak of SARA, scanning, are we going to stop responding to calls for service? Absolutely not. But what we are going to do rather is we're going to start looking for patterns of calls. Are cars being broken into on a Friday night, on a Saturday night in a particular area? Is there a possible drug house in the area? Are cars coming and going late at night, criminal activity occurring? We're going to start looking for patterns and scanning, determining what is happening where, at what time. Analysis. As a part of the SARA process, S-A-R-A process, scanning is necessary to determine if a problem actually exists. If the determination is made that a hotspot for crime has been identified or a pattern of criminal behavior has been uncovered, the process moves forward. A specific officer or team of officers should be assigned to implement the next stage of SARA, the SARA process, which is A for analysis. Analysis is at the core of the problem-solving process. It's not really all that different from the investigative work that is involved in any open case. The difference is in the scope. Consider the old saying that you can't see the forest for the trees. In SARA, officers are looking at the trees to see exactly what their impact is on the forest as a whole. Using another tree analogy, think about the deforestation of the rainforest in South America. The guy with the chainsaw simply sees or simply is thinking about chopping down the tree directly in front of him. Scientists, conservationists, and environmentalists, on the other hand, are looking at the impact of that one tree being cut down, the impact on the earth as a whole. Without community involvement, this whole process is counterproductive. We have to have community involvement. We have to resist the temptation to go into this process thinking that we have a quick fix, telling the community, we've got this, everything is under control. We have to have constant communication and have community involvement for this program and these problem-solving efforts to be successful. Analysis at work. To illustrate the analysis process in action, let's use the example of how these cities might approach a problem like gangs. Once found only in low-income areas of some of the country's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, gangs have proliferated and have put down roots from coast to coast. In some communities, the gangs they actually own the streets. Citizens live in perpetual state of fear. Even those who have no stake in gang activity must take caution to avoid being caught in the crossfire of inter-gang conflicts. Violent fights, drive-by shootings, drug trafficking, and defacing property, gang graffiti are everyday occurrences in these communities. If law enforcement's approach, however, is we're going to crack down on gangs, but it does not invite the law-abiding members of the community to participate in the process, or if the problem isn't broken down into manageable components, then we're back to a whack-a-mole image. Taking one gangbanger down at a time does not address the issues of why gangs are in the community in the first place. Let's hypothetically discuss a city that could be located anywhere in America and see how the gang problem could be addressed from a community policing perspective. Wars are not typically won by one major confrontation. Many take similar, smaller battles to overcome the problem. The same with SARA, SARA. The community needs to work together with law enforcement to determine, are gangs a problem? If so, where? Where's the problem? What type of activity is being involved? We need to pinpoint areas, we need to pinpoint groups of activities, and determine where to address our focus. Pick your battles. As law enforcement and community begin to ask and answer some of these questions, it should be much easier to determine where resources should be applied. Some of these resources may be law enforcement related, but many of them can be more community related. For many kids, gangs provide a sense of belonging and a sense of security they don't get from home. Many young gang members come from single-parent families where that one parent may be working several jobs just to make ends meet. How does a community deal with an issue like this? One way proven to be successful is give kids an alternative, such as after-school programs to keep them occupied until the parent gets home from work, competitive sport leagues, drill teams, art or music programs. Activities such as these are much better organized and managed by community members than by law enforcement. With the cooperation of law enforcement, however, kids are beginning to show signs of gang interest can be steered away to safer and more productive alternatives. Not only do these programs keep kids safe, they attack the problem of ongoing gang recruitment at its roots. Picking your battles. It was proven back in the 1990s that a tipping point for many of these gangs is addressing the graffiti. A particular gang member will move into an area, they may put graffiti out, their graffiti markings showing their particular territory that they are claiming as their own. They may throw the tennis shoes tied together over a power line. What we've learned as early as in the 90s is that when these are addressed head on, when we repaint over the graffiti, when we take the tennis shoes down from the power line, it is actually a tipping point. It reduces the power of the gang. If through analysis, the determination is made that there are 6 gangs in our hypothetical community, but only 3 of them are engaged in criminal activity, the focus of law enforcement attention should be on those 3. It would be wise to keep the others under observation so that if these gang circumstances change, law enforcement would not be caught off guard. If community members and law enforcement are working in tandem, the community will be more willing to keep officers apprised of a change in a wannabe gang's activities. The bulk of law enforcement manpower and resources should be then focused on the more dangerous of the gangs. The R in SARA, S-A-R-A, stands for response. When a problem has been identified and analyzed, law enforcement and community members' focus turns to their response. In our previous example, law enforcement and citizens were able to determine that 3 out of 6 gangs in the community were responsible for the bulk of criminal activity and that the drug trade was being the driving force behind most of the violence in this area. By focusing a response on the 3 gangs and locations where they piled their trade, law enforcement officers were able to curtail both drug sales and violence associated with them. By community members tackling the graffiti problem head on, a message was being sent that the citizens were no longer going to sit idly while criminals controlled their neighborhoods. At the same time, creating after-school programs and sport leagues gave younger kids an attractive, safer alternative than gang associations. Our targeted response wins battles. When the community speaks and law enforcement actually listens and we work together to focus our efforts and our energies, when we know when crimes are occurring in specific areas, when we know exactly where those areas are, we work together, we work with our limited resources more efficiently, more effectively, and we seek to actually win these battles. The final A in SARA, S-A-R-A, stands for assessment. Just as analysis on the front end gives the community and law enforcement a better opportunity to combat crime more efficiently, assessment on the back end provides the progressive report. Traditionally, law enforcement has used statistics such as the number of arrests, the response time, the clearance rates to measure success. These are important measurements to be sure, but they do not take into account how the community feels. Law enforcement agencies can have great statistics, but still have citizens fearful about walking their neighborhood streets at night. Other ways to determine our success in community-oriented policing, other measurements. Do we have more businesses moving into the area? Have our property taxes increased? Do we have better services available? Do we have people moving into the area? More business opportunities? Less crime? Do we have a better quality of life in our community? In the beginning of this course, we discussed how people often think that community policing is just about feel-good programs. Some skeptics with limited knowledge of the concepts like COPS and SARA may conclude that community policing is nothing more than an elaborate public relations campaign using programs like DARE and bike patrols as examples to prove their point. In fact, nothing can be further from the truth. We discussed these two programs at the beginning of this course. Let's now consider them in light of what you now know about community policing. As stated earlier, communication is one of the key foundation components of community policing. Without communication, success is not possible. In the case of DARE, children in elementary schools are being given the message about the dangers associated with drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Waiting until kids are in junior high or high school to talk to them about these matters is too late. By the time, many have already become deeply involved in any or all of these three activities. But other things are also happening as a result of the DARE officers' presence in the school. The DARE program, it's more than just teaching your kids about the dangers of drugs and alcohol and things of that nature. It's teaching our kids that law enforcement is approachable. They're people just like you and me. They're out there doing their jobs, they're working in the community, they are approachable. They're actual human beings that you can sit and have a conversation with, laugh with, carry on with. The bike patrol officer, why are they out there? They're out there to actually communicate with the public, keep the public safe, and let people know that we are human. Law enforcement, we're human. We can get out there, we can have conversations, we have families, we've got kids with the same lives, just like you. We're out there trying to keep you safe. What we've learned from this course. The most important thing to take from this course is the importance of communication to the success or failure of a community policing program. If law enforcement hopes to be successful in addressing community or criminal activities in the community in long term, officers must be communicating with citizens of the community to discover what their problems are and to work together in partnership with them to solve those problems. Again, my name is Mike Earl. I thank you for your time concerning this training on community-oriented policing. Concerning this program and other programs offered by Local Government Risk Management Services, please go to lgrms.com where you'll find many courses, much information on that site.